In Ecclesiastes 3:8, it says, "To everything there is a season." Later turned into a song by Pete Seeger, recorded by the Byrds in the 60s. But few of you out there are likely to remember that, I expect. This kind of summarizes hexagram number 25, Wu Wang, the blessing, heaven over thunder. The purpose of these sessions, as you may by now know, is we'll do three things. We'll offer you some ideas, my ideas, as to what the hexagram may mean to anyone who's cast it today. And I suggest that your very presence here indicates that you have cast it today, in effect. Secondly, to draw attention to the timeless wisdom, I rarely refer to authorities more recent than 3,000 years old. For reasons I've gone into, I'm not going to today anyway, to assess, and also to assess the extent to which the hexagram reflects current events. Wu Wang, sometimes called without falsehood, no error, something like that. I call it the blessing. And the way it's structured is heaven on top of thunder. That is the Father, the authority, God, you know, in terms of symbolism, very little difference between those characters. And the Son, it's the blessing of the Father to the Son. And what it is a set of instructions as to how to follow the middle path, how to be enlightened, if you like, how to be what the Chinese call a junsa, a kind of a how-to towards enlightenment. So let's look at the structure just a little bit. I recommend that you have a copy of this in front of you. Confucius talks about it as being movement with strength. The firm is at a central place and has a correspondence. And the fact is, these things are very hard to put into words. And this is just my 5 bobs worth. Anyway, the structure, heaven over thunder. So if you have one in front of you, you can see that there's a yang line, an unbroken line at the bottom, 2 broken lines, 2 yin lines, and then 3 unbroken lines at the top. Those 3 at the top are the trigram called Qian, or heaven. Those 3 at the bottom, the yang, yin, yin, are the eldest son. So it's slightly unbalanced, 2 yin lines, 4 yang. The various lines can work together, and we'll come to that. I needn't go into too much detail, but what's interesting perhaps is what's called the ruler, the ruling line, which is tends to be either the typical line or the strongest line, the most useful line. Authorities differ on this. The traditional thing is to say it's the first line. I think I tend to go with that. Sorry, the 5th line, I tend to go with that because it is firm, central, and correct, meaning that it is in the right place with the right standards and it's difficult to move, if you like. There aren't that many opportunities given the way these things are structured. But the first is sometimes considered as being telling you what it's about, because if you like, it's a pilgrimage, it's a progress from the bottom to the top. The relative time is the 9th month of the dog, though this particular hexagram actually relates to the month of the earth ox this month, because this is the gosh, what is it, 20th or 20th of a series of my ideas about what these hexagrams might mean, and this relates to the month of the earth ox, January of 2026. What aficionados of the Lord of the Rings might recognize this quotation: "A wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to." And as I say, this is a kind of a how-to live right, if you like. The Gua text, Yuan Heng Li Chen, I won't dwell on that. The text of the whole hexagram, Yuan Heng Li Chen, is an invocation. It's like to the sky, to the stars, to the earth, to the wind, whatever. It has kind of sacramental power, if you like. It says the incorrect will forfeit good fortune, and it's not favourable to have a goal. Now, not favourable to have a goal is a thing that is at the heart of this, that means what it means and also doesn't mean what it means. This is about infinite vigilance. This is about appropriateness. And I'm not sure the words exist for explaining that without ambiguity. But we'll have a go. So, line 1. So if you've drawn this hexagram and it has line 1 changing, What Confucius says is truthfulness need not deal with artifice in the same way the healthy need not treat with medicine. So Wu Wang Wangji, the first line, firm, not central, but it is correct. And it changes tellingly to hexagram 12 stagnation if you change the bottom line. So the changed line outlines the alternative. Now these changing lines, sometimes they are advice, sometimes they are the implications, sometimes they are warnings. In this case, it's kind of a warning because what it's saying is we have to embrace change, but it has to be appropriate change. And stagnation is about the idea that we must have change at any cost. That is not, I think, what is being said. So it's saying that change needs to be appropriate. And all of these lines are a kind of way of saying, be in touch with the Tao, that is, be in touch with what is happening, be in touch with the process, the flow, if you like, which is not hard, but we often have lots of good reasons why we won't do it, and we may find it uncomfortable sometimes. So that's the first change. Change for change's sake, not such a great idea. A second one, the translation that I have, I use a combination of Peter Firebrace's, who's a genius acupuncturist who taught me the Book of Changes the first time I was studying it properly some 25 years ago, and that of Wu Jing Nuan, his Book of Changes, his Yi Jing, Y-I, one word, J-I-N-G, another word, is probably the best one if what you want to learn to do is to interpret. If you want to use this as a diviner's tool. So, second line says, don't be ploughing while you're harvesting. So, don't be considering tomorrow while you're in today. And of course, we have to on some level. We have to be conscious of the whole picture if we can, but to be in the moment. If you like, what it's saying is don't count your chickens before they're hatched. It says also, don't consider the ground being cleared while you're clearing it. In both cases, it's about being here now. And a second line is the middle of the trigram and is therefore very often illustrating the middle path. And what it changes to is hexagram 10, Lu, stepping, which is heaven over lake. And again, if you look at the structure, yang, yang, yin, broken line, and 3 unbroken lines at top. And the implication is you have 2 safe steps, yang, yang, and 1 hazardous one. You have to stay awake. So yes, you should move, but when it's appropriate, and you need to be awake because it may be that you should move and it may be you should stay. Third line, Wu Wang Qi Zai, yin, not firm, not central, not correct. It's about someone nicking your ox or you nicking someone else's ox. What it's telling you, I think, is that life is not a win-lose thing. It's a win-win thing. And in this case, the traveller gains an ox and the farmer loses one. Probably not necessary. But it's also about accepting what is going on and being able to see that in every event there can be both good and bad fortune, or if you like, in every event there can always be learning and always be good fortune. And it changes to union of men, hexagram number 13, Tong Ren, heaven over fire. I sometimes think of this as heaven on fire. It's willful. It's about rapid change. It's about inappropriate change. I think possibly violent change, often used as being about actual physical revolution. The fourth line, capable of firmness, would you no error? There are no rules. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. Jesus is often an interesting reference. I mean, I'm not religious. I just find the Bible, a book of great wisdom, great interest. But the Jesus Project, extraordinary thing. But he said, turn the other cheek, and yet he was the guy who turned over the tables of the money changers. I don't know whether he actually assaulted the money changers, or rather think not, but he was not turning the other cheek. So if you like, this is something about being flexible. There are no rules. and it changes to, if we change this line, the fourth line, and the fourth line being the beginning of the upper trigram is often a difficult one. It's kind of a bridging, but it changes to increase or increasing hexagram 42, which restores the yin-yang balance. So if you were to write down what it looks like to change from this hexagram 25 to hexagram 42, what you end up now with is 3 yin and 3 yang, and what it's suggesting is something like the best man for a job is a woman, but it is certainly about flexibility and about openness, which brings us to the fifth line, which is Wu Wang Ziji, Wu Yao Yu Si, constant illness healed without medicine. What is it saying? Well, this is a kind of perplexing one. One way to say it is that we exist on many levels at different times. The changed hexagram, number 21, Shihei biting through, is probably an indication. It's probably an indication. It's telling you that you may have to go through stuff. It may not always look rosy. It may not always be that the answer is obvious. But as I sometimes say, the Tao is not necessarily the open door and not necessarily not the closed door. It is about, if you like, and I see there aren't words to explain this really adequately, but I'm doing my best. When is attention required and when not? We need to be both awake, flexible, able to be firm. And this is a very strong line. It is correct, it is central, it is yang. Which brings us to the sixth line. Wu Wang, no error. And this says no goal is appropriate. But what it's saying, I think, is that the sun doesn't need you in order to rise, and also having a goal and not having a goal, being aware of objectives as they arise. There is this phrase in Chinese literature, wei wu wei, which is action, not taking action. Letting things be done through us and for us rather than by us. So it may be this is about waiting. It may be that it is about doing something, but it is about being here now. And it changes to hexagram 17, following. Following is about absolute faith. It's about unquestioning obedience, and which is a double-edged sword. And the implication is not such a great idea, and it's what religions are built upon. And I leave you with that thought. That's Hexagram 25. I'm Richard Ashworth. I'm signing off. I hope we will talk again in a month's time. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.